Hey guys, Drobo here. So I got a really interesting post I want to talk about today. And this one is not a new idea. I've seen many people talk about it, but for the longest time I didn't actually believe it to be the case. And what I'm talking about is, of course, that One Piece is repeating itself. And so the reason why I believe this now, and I didn't believe this in the past, is because I didn't really look at all the evidence. I saw these rumblings, but just thought to myself, well, this can't be the case. However, there was a really informative post on Oro Jackson by a user named australopithecus, who's a good friend of mine. And he kind of forced me to read it because he's a good friend of mine. And I checked it out, and it really just, after reading his post, really dawned on me that this is actually what's going on. One Piece is legitimately repeating itself in various ways. So I'll go ahead and include a link to his article from Oro Jackson in the description and in the comment section. Please check it out and give him some love for taking the time to find all this evidence, because the amount of evidence that he found is just truly ridiculous. So I could legitimately talk about this for 30 minutes, going into a lot of the evidence that Australopithecus brought up. However, I've previously tried to make this video and it was legitimately 40 minutes long, which is just too long for anybody to watch. So I'm going to vastly shorten this. And so if you want more specific information on the possible parallels, pre and post time skip, then go and click on Australopithecus' link and read his post. But I'm going to go into the generalities that can be made between the parallels between pre and post time skip. To shorten the amount of content that I have to talk about so that I can get into future speculation and possible arcs in the future and how they would relate to arcs of the past. Alright, so let's get this started. I think the first and most obvious parallel that we have since entering the New World is the Fishman Island Arc and its relation to the Arlong Park Arc from before the time skip. This is obvious in just many ways. I don't think I need to talk too long about this, but basically the Fishman Island Arc is in many ways a continuation of the Arlong Park Arc, and many of the plots that we were first introduced to in the Arlong Park Arc were further detailed in the Fishman Island Arc in a way that you could really piece them together as one complete story. Some of the most significant parallels that we have between the two arcs is, first of all, racism, Fishman, human conflict, etc. We also have with the Arlong Park Arc the focus on the past of Nami and how her mother sort of went against Arlong and his ideals. And then so there's some specific scenes that are sort of repeated, which is that Nami's mother ends up getting her arm broken by Arlong. And then also she ends up getting shot by Arlong. And then so going into the Fishman Island Arc, we have Otohime, the mother of Shirahoshi. So we have two mothers here. And Otohime against sort of what Hody Jones and other fishmen who were part of his group stood for. She also ended up getting her arm broken randomly, sort of a direct homage to the previous chapters of One Piece. And then we also see that Otohime ends up getting shot and killed, same as Nami's mother, by Hody Jones. Another really interesting similarity is that leading up into the Fishman Island Arc, the Straw Hats ended up encountering a sea creature by the name of the Kraken. And then also leading up into the Arlong Park Arc, the Straw Hats ended up encountering a creature who was Moo the sea cow. And both the Kraken and the sea cow played identical roles within the arcs that they appeared in, which is that Moo ends up encountering the Straw Hats, goes to attack them. Luffy knocks him out in one punch, and then they end up taming Moo so that Moo ends up pulling their ship to take them into the next island. Moo then arrives at the island and hits his head and knocks himself out. He then appears later on in the arc as a subordinate of Arlong. He immediately sees the Straw Hats after meeting them in the past and is like, okay, well, I don't really want to fight these people. He was ended up forcing to fight them by Arlong, and then rather than attack Moo, Luffy ends up attacking Arlong himself. And so this is a direct parallel to what we see with the Kraken in the Fishman Island Arc. They meet the Kraken, Luffy knocks him out in one punch, they end up having the Kraken pull their ship, the Kraken ends up getting knocked out by a falling boulder. Then they actually get to the actual arc, and it's revealed that the Kraken is a subordinate of Hody Jones. Hody calls him into battle, and the Kraken doesn't want to fight Luffy. Hody forces him to, and then Luffy decides to take out Hody rather than take out the Kraken. And then actually another interesting similarity is Luffy ends up using the same exact moves versus Hody as he did Arlong in the past, but obviously upgraded. So clear parallels. You cannot be taken any other way other than this is a direct reference to the Arlong Park Arc. But this makes a lot of sense given the context that the Arlong Park Arc and the Fishman Island Arc are, in reality, the same story continued. And so if this were it, then this would be it, but it's not. There's other parallels that we have between other arcs other than Fishman Island and Arlong Park, which is that the next major arc was the Punk Hazard Arc. And just generally speaking, the Punk Hazard Arc, what it was a foothold. It was a way to sort of get us into the Dressrosa Arc, where a lot of the pieces in the Punk Hazard Arc were really there because of plots revolving around the Dressrosa Arc, Doflamingo, the Trait of Smile, etc. And this is really similar to the lead up to the Alabasta Arc, which the Alabasta Arc, there was a lot of islands that led up to getting there, and they seemed really related to the main villain, the Shishibukai crocodile, similar to how the Dressrosa and the Shishibukai Doflamingo had sort of his story was related to the previous arc in Punk Hazard. So going into the evidence here that parallels the two, there's quite a bit of it, and it's a bit random because there's a lot of arcs leading up into the Alabasta Arc comparatively to the Dressrosa Arc where there was just the Punk Hazard Arc. But the parallels are this. So we have, what's interesting is in the Logtown Arc, which was in between Alabasta and Arlong Park Arc, we end up meeting Dragon, and Dragon creates a storm that sends the Straw Hats all the way to the Calm Belt where they meet Sea Kings, and then their ship ends up being carried on the nose of a Sea King as it rose out of the water, which is really similar to after the Fishman Island Arc. They end up leaving Fishman Island, they get knocked into a stream, which is basically the Dragon Stream. I don't remember the exact name, but it had Dragon in the title, so Dragon being the one to create the storm in the past. And then they end up getting carried by whales, not Sea Kings but whales, but it's still similar, on their nose as they carry them all the way to the surface, where they eventually lead up into Punk Hazard. Once they get to Punk Hazard, they receive a distress signal from some of the people that were on Punk Hazard, and guess who intercepts this? It's Smoker. And then so going back in the past, how did Smoker know that the Straw Hats would arrive in Alabasta? Well, he intercepted information, the same that he does for the Punk Hazard Arc, and then that's how we get an introduction of Smoker into the story of sort of the Alabasta saga, and then we have the same sort of thing happen here with the Punk Hazard Arc. I also find it very interesting that both in the Alabasta Arc and in the Punk Hazard Arc, that Smoker ends up being basically put into jail or confinement with the Straw Hats in both cases, which is unprecedented other than these two occurrences in which it happened. And the fact that they might actually be parallels of each other adds a lot of credence to the idea that they are actually parallels of each other. Some other similarities are when they arrive on Punk Hazard, they end up getting knocked out by sleeping gas, which is reminiscent of Baroque works and the island in which they first meet the members of the Baroque works, and they seem all nice and friendly, but they end up getting knocked out due to the food that they ate there. Some other parallels that are really interesting as well. We have giants that appear in the Little Garden Arc, and we have giant children in Punk Hazard. There's also an ancient creature with a dinosaur, and what ends up happening is Luffy ends up jumping on its back, the dinosaur tries to eat him, and then the giant slices off the dinosaur's neck. And then going into the Punk Hazard Arc, we actually have the ancient creature or mythical creature, the dragon. Luffy decides to jump on its back the same way. The dragon tries to eat Luffy, and then Zoro ends up cutting his neck off. So very, very similar sequence of events with previously thought to be extinct creatures. We have the petrification by use of the gas that Caesar has created of the people on the island of Punk Hazard. We also have a Candleman, Mr. 3, who ends up basically petrifying as well the Straw Hat crew, so there's some similarities there. So yeah, there are a lot of similarities between the Punk Hazard Arc and sort of the arcs leading up to the Alabasta Arc and a little bit of the Alabasta Arc itself. But the evidence here isn't so much to make you think, okay, for a fact, Oda is using these as references to the future. There might be specific things that he's paying homage to, but the arcs themselves are pretty much different. And part of the reason is just because there's more arcs leading into the Alabasta Arc, so there was a lot of material for him to choose from. So for the most part, he could pick and choose randomly and leave stuff out while still using it as a template for future arcs. But this is, we're going to go into now another one of those crucial arcs in which it's very clear that arcs are being paralleled, which is the Alabasta and Dressrosa arcs. So at face value here, we have Shishibukai, who's trying to take over a country in the Alabasta Arc, and then in Dressrosa we have Shishibukai, who has already taken over a country. So sort of a progression of events here, sort of taking it one step further in time as a sort of what-if scenario, had Crocodile taken over Alabasta. We also have a subordinate of the powerful Shishibukai in Crocodile, Vivi, who ends up betraying him because of her sort of princess status and allegiance to her country. We have something similar happen in the Dressrosa arc where we have Viola, who's seemingly working for Doflamingo, but is in fact looking for an opportunity to take him down. Both arcs are the only two major arcs to feature rebels as a key component of the plot. In the Alabasta arc, we have Koza and the rebels trying to take out the Alabasta and their leaders because of they think that the Alabasta is doing something bad against the country. And then going into the future here, we have the toy soldier Kiros and the dwarves, who are sort of rebels looking for a plan to take out Doflamingo and what he has done to the citizens of Dressrosa. Also, we can't forget that the sort of premise of the Alabasta arc was to keep the king of Alabasta with his throne and title because he had not done anything wrong. Whereas with the Dressrosa arc, the Straw Hats weren't there to save King Riku, and he actually was overthrown because of the actions of Doflamingo. So again, we have a sort of continuation of the plot as sort of a what-if situation. Another interesting thing is that Oda decided to copy specific powers as well and improve them between the Alabasta and Dressrosa arcs, which is that we have a woman and part of Baroque works who has the Kilo Kilo no Mi. Basically, she can control her weight and then fall on people. And then we have the Tun Tun fruit by Macvice of the Doflamingo family. There's also similarities with bomb powers. We have the guy who sort of uses snot to make it explode. I think he was like Mr. 5. And then going into the Dressrosa arc, we have the bomb guy from Dressrosa. So those powers are seemingly very similar. Mr. 1 seems to have a very similar power to Baby 5. Baby 5 can turn her limbs into sort of projectile weapons, guns, etc. Whereas Mr. 5 could turn his limbs into swords, etc. So while not the same, very similar type devil fruit powers. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop here, but there's even more similarities that you can look into if you compare the Dressrosa and Alabasta arcs. Very, very similar. Going into the next one, we have the Zou arc, which immediately followed the Dressrosa arc, and it seems in many ways similar to the Skypiea arc, with the main objective of these arcs sort of leading to the discovery of a poneglyph, which really helps the Straw Hats in their journey to understand the true history. Also, we have clear evidence that in the past, Roger had traveled to Skypiea in order to leave his message on the pillar next to the poneglyph, and then in the Zou arc as well, clear indication that Roger was there in the past in order to find the poneglyph that was located there. We also have voices that play an important role in both stories. In the Skypiea arc, Luffy ends up ringing the bell of Shandora, which then creates the voice of Shandora, which rings across the land. And then in the Zou arc, at the end of the Zou arc, we have Zunisha, who has his voice, or her voice, and is basically an important part of the finality of the story. So we have two voices here, which is, again, unusual, especially given the context that all these previous things seemingly are paralleled as well. And that's not even to mention that we have the people of Shandora and the Sky Island people, who are sort of like aliens. And then we have another race with Zou, and both of these races are protecting their poneglyph, specifically for the Ancient Kingdom. Now, here's where things get a bit hazy. So I want to use all this information that I just gave you to sort of add some context to possible parallels in the future. One thing is that the next arc after the Skypiea arc is the Water 7 arc, and the huge theme of the Water 7 arc was the betrayal of the members of CP9, who weren't known at the time as members of CP9, to the other people in Galileo, Iceberg, Polly, etc. And then so I've already speculated that I think that there might be a traitor on Zou who's working for Kaito. So clear parallel here between Water 7 potentially and Zou. We also have a huge sort of plot revolving around ancient weapons in the Water 7 arc, which is that the members of CP9 are trying to locate the ancient weapon Pluton, whose blueprints are being kept by Frankie. I also suspect that Momonosuke is the ancient weapon Uranus. Not because of this information that I just gave you, just because of what's been revealed in the actual Zou arc. So it's really interesting, again, that we have possible parallels between the Zo Arc and Water 7, and that both arcs the sort of revealed to be an ancient weapon that's playing a huge role in the plot itself. Alright, so now let's move on to parallels from arcs that we've already seen, and then focus on the arcs that are coming up. So we have the Whole Cake Island arc, and this is where I think events get a little scrambled, but I think Oda is now going to start skipping arcs and using parallels in different ways. So far it's been in complete chronological order. We have Arlong Park, events after Arlong Park leading up into the Alabasta arc related to Punk Hazard, and then we have Alabasta and Dressrosa itself having parallels, and then we have Zo Arc and Skypiea and Water 7, which were the arcs after the Alabasta arc. So if we stayed in chronological order, the next major arc that would need to be touched on is the Enies Lobby arc, but I don't currently think we're in a position to get parallels between Enies Lobby and Whole Cake Island. I don't think that that's going to happen unless CP0 ends up showing up on Whole Cake Island, which I guess is possible, but doesn't really seem likely at this point in time. The key components of the Enies Lobby arc seems to be the Straw Hats fight against the world government. We also know that Cypherpole Zero is starting to get some time within the actual New World, where we see Cypherpole Zero is trying to track down the revolutionaries, and they led them all the way to Baltigo. So there's definitely going to be Cypherpole Zero action in the future, and I think this arc will be the one that's paralleled with the Enies Lobby arc. So the Whole Cake Island arc is going to be inspired off of other arcs. And what's interesting is people have already started to notice some similarities with the Whole Cake Island arc and possible inspirations to past arcs. This starts with the Thriller Bark arc, where the Straw Hats arrive on Thriller Bark and they enter a forest, which seems really reminiscent to the forest that we're currently in the Whole Cake Island arc. I've also noticed some similarities, possible similarities, between Boa Hancock and the Amazon Lily arc and the Whole Cake Island arc. So I think at least Whole Cake Island's inspiration will revolve around Amazon Lily and Thriller Bark. There could be others as well. With the entrance of the Vinsmoke into the story, this very well could have some possible relationship to Enies Lobby. The Vinsmoke being sort of related to the world government and being able to attend the reverie. There could be some ties there that we don't yet see, but at the very least I think the Thriller Bark arc and the Amazon Lily arc will be huge influences on the Whole Cake Island arc. Another interesting thing that I wanted to sort of tie together is that we've actually skipped an arc. If we go to the Amazon Lily arc and the Thriller Bark arc, we've skipped another arc, which is the Shabondi arc, which happened between those two arcs. But I think that right now we don't currently have all the pieces necessary to make clear parallels between the Shabondi arc and the Whole Cake Island arc, which is why I think it's going to be skipped. And what's interesting about this is that we actually have an arc in the future which is currently setting up to be very reminiscent and parallel to the Shabondi arc, which is the Kaito Arc. The key points of the Shabondi arc were the entrance of the 11 Supernova, the intervening of the world government, and the Straw Hats' complete defeat at the hands of the forces that they were dealing with there. And so for the Kaito arc, the clear sort of possible parallel that we have here is the entrance of all the supernova into the Kaito arc. And I say this for a couple reasons, but the first reason is that we already seemingly have reason to believe that the majority of the supernova are going to be present in some way during the Kaito arc. First of all, we have Zoro and Luffy, obviously. Law is with them as well, so that's 3 of the supernova. Then we have Kids, Hawkins, and Scratchman Apu, who are already clearly in this arc as well, along with X-Drake, which is already the majority of the supernova. Arouge has already been seen associated with Kaito because on a Sky Island he sees Kaito fall off, so maybe Arouge makes appearance. And I don't really have any reason right now to speculate why Capone or Jewelry Bonnie will show up to the Kaito arc, but with every other supernova there and a possible parallel with the Shabondi arc, I think that both Jewelry Bonnie and Capone will also make their way somehow into the Kaito arc. So with this being said, it's really possible that the world government also makes an appearance in the Kaito arc as well, because we know that in the Shabondi arc, the Marines and the Pacifista were there, so maybe Green Bull will first be introduced into the story during the Kaito arc. I think that this is extremely possible. And another question that I want to ask myself is that, people right now don't think that Luffy and crew can take on Kaido, even with all the current allies that he has, unless he brings Big Mom with him to help fight against Kaido, another Yonko. And so, is this possibly leading up into Kaido almost completely defeating the Straw Hats, similar to how they were pretty much completely defeated in the Shabondi arc versus Kizaru and the Pacifista? And the last clear parallel that we have between a future arc and a past arc is that we have the Reverie. It's coming up. It's going to be an important badass event. And I think that this arc is going to be paralleled with the battle at Marineford. I think that we already have reason to believe that the revolutionaries might end up showing up to the Reverie arc. It's possible even Kaito could make an appearance on this, although that's not 100% sure at this moment. And so we have the Marineford arc, in which you have a Yonko going against the world government. The Reverie, all the world government will be there, all the leaders will be there, and so it's perfectly set up for the Reverie to have influence from the Marineford arc. There is so much more that I could talk about in regards to this, but I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here, or else this will get too long. But yeah, again, I want to thank Australopithecus for introducing me to this idea and fully convincing me of its relevance, because I do think that it is actually a thing that's going on. And I think that we can use this as potentially evidence going into the future to possibly predict some things that might happen in the future of One Piece. But let me know what you guys think. Like the video if you like the video. I would really appreciate it if you subscribed, and hope you enjoyed the video, and have a nice day, guys.